The blood on Helena Lancaster's hands had dried to a rust-brown stain by the time Sheriff Watkins dragged her into the Georgetown, Colorado jailhouse, and she knew with a sinking certainty that no amount of explaining would convince these men that she had only been trying to stay alive. It was March of 1878, and the mining town sat nestled in the Rocky Mountains where spring still felt like winter, where the wind cut through canvas and wood with equal indifference, and where a woman who defended herself against a man's advances was considered more dangerous than the man himself. The cell door clanged shut behind her, and Helena pressed her back against the cold stone wall, trying to steady her breathing. Her dress was torn at the shoulder where Marcus Brennan had grabbed her, tried to force her into the alley behind the general store where she worked. She had warned him to stop. She had pushed him away. But he kept coming, his breath reeking of whiskey, his hands everywhere they should not have been. The knife had been in her pocket, the small blade she used to open crates and cut twine. When he pinned her against the wall, when his hand closed around her throat, she had pulled it free and struck out blindly, desperately, just wanting him to stop. He had staggered backward, clutching his arm where the blade had sliced through his shirt and into flesh. Not deep, not fatal, but enough to make him roar with rage and pain. Enough for people to come running. Enough for everyone to see Marcus Brennan bleeding and Helena Lancaster holding a knife, and in that moment, the truth of what had happened ceased to matter. "You will hang for this," Sheriff Watkins had said, his mustache bristling with indignation. "Marcus Brennan is a respected member of this community. His father owns half the silver mines around here." Helena had tried to explain, but the words stuck in her throat. The other witnesses, the ones who must have heard her cries for help, suddenly remembered being inside, being occupied, being anywhere but close enough to have seen what really happened. That was how it worked when a poor shop girl went up against money and power. She sat on the narrow cot in her cell and pulled her knees to her chest, wondering if her sister Rose would even be told what had happened. Rose was only 15, working as a seamstress for Mrs. Patterson on the other side of town. They had been orphaned 3 years ago when their parents died of pneumonia within days of each other, and Helena had been working herself to exhaustion ever since to keep them both fed and housed in the tiny room they rented above the bakery. The hours crawled past. Through the small barred window, she watched the light change from afternoon gold to evening gray. She heard boots on the wooden sidewalk outside, voices raised in anger and excitement. A crowd was gathering, and her stomach twisted with fear. She knew what happened to people who crossed the Brennan family. Justice was supposed to be blind, but in Georgetown, it saw perfectly well who had money and who did not. When the door to the jailhouse opened again, Helena expected Sheriff Watkins, or perhaps Marcus Brennan himself, come to gloat. Instead, she heard a voice she did not recognize, low and steady and carrying an authority that made even the sheriff pause. "I want to see the girl." "Now hold on, stranger. This is official business. You cannot just walk in here and demand to see a prisoner." "I am not demanding, I am asking." "But I will see her regardless of whether you give permission." There was something in the tone that brooked no argument, and Helena rose from the cot, moving to the bars to get a better view. The man who stepped into sight was tall and lean, with dark hair that touched his collar and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore the practical clothes of a working cowboy, trail dusty denim and a worn leather vest, but he carried himself with a confidence that suggested he had faced down more dangerous things than a small-town sheriff. His gaze found hers through the bars, and Helena felt something shift in her chest, a flutter of hope she had not dared to feel since this nightmare began. "I am Cody Jensen," he said, his voice gentler now that he was speaking to her. I was in the general store when Marcus Brennan followed you outside. I saw him grab you. I heard you tell him to stop." The words hit Helena like a physical force, and she gripped the bars to keep herself steady. "You saw." "I saw," Cody confirmed. He turned back to Sheriff Watkins, and his expression hardened. "This woman defended herself against an assault. You have no cause to hold her." The sheriff's face flushed red. "That is not for you to decide. Marcus Brennan says she attacked him without provocation. Marcus Brennan is a liar." Cody's words were flat, factual. "And I am willing to testify to that in front of a judge, a jury, or God himself. Your choice, Sheriff." Sheriff Watkins sputtered, clearly torn between his desire to stay in the good graces of the Brennan family and the legal complication of having a witness who contradicted their story. Helena watched the calculation happen behind his eyes, the weighing of consequences. "The Brennans will not like this," the sheriff said finally. "I imagine they will not," Cody agreed. "But unless you plan to charge me with perjury before I have even testified, I suggest you let Miss Lancaster go before this becomes a bigger embarrassment to your office than it already is." The standoff stretched for a long moment, and then Sheriff Watkins cursed under his breath and pulled out his keys. The cell door swung open, and Helena stepped out on shaking legs, hardly daring to believe this was real. "This is not over," the sheriff warned. "The Brennans will have their say." "I am counting on it," Cody replied. He offered Helena his arm, a gesture so courteous and unexpected that she almost laughed. "Miss Lancaster, may I escort you somewhere safe?" She took his arm because her legs felt like water and she needed the support. They walked out of the jailhouse together into the cool evening air, and Helena saw the crowd that had gathered disperse with disappointed mutters. They had been hoping for a spectacle, perhaps a lynching. Instead, they got a quiet exit and a stranger who looked ready to put a bullet in anyone who tried to stop them. When they were far enough from the jailhouse that Helena felt she could breathe again, she stopped and turned to face her rescuer. "Why did you do that? You do not know me. Helping me makes you an enemy of the Brennan family." Cody met her gaze with those steady storm-gray eyes. "You did right, defending yourself. No woman should be punished for that. Now let me defend you the rest of the way." The simple declaration made Helena's throat tight with emotion. She had spent so many years being strong, being the one who held everything together for Rose, for their little makeshift life in this hard mountain town. Having someone step forward to stand beside her felt like a gift she had not known how to ask for. "I cannot pay you," she said quietly. "I have nothing to offer in return for this kindness. I am not asking for payment." Cody glanced down the street, his expression thoughtful. "But you should not stay in Georgetown tonight. The Brennans have a lot of pride and not much sense. You have somewhere you can go." Helena thought of Rose, thought of their little room above the bakery that suddenly seemed like a trap rather than a home. "My sister. I need to get to my sister. Then that is where we will go." Cody kept his hand on his gun as they walked, and Helena noticed the way his eyes never stopped moving, cataloging every shadow and doorway. He moved like a man used to danger, comfortable with it in a way that should have frightened her, but instead made her feel safer than she had in years. They found Rose at Mrs. Patterson's shop, bent over a wedding dress with needle and thread. Her face went pale when she saw Helena's torn dress and the wild look in her eyes, but Cody's presence seemed to reassure her that this was not another disaster, at least not yet. Helena explained quickly, keeping her voice low so Mrs. Patterson would not overhear from the front room. Rose listened with wide eyes, her needle forgotten in her lap. "We need to leave Georgetown," Helena said, "at least for a while until this settles down." "Leave?" Rose looked stricken. "But where would we go? This is our home." "This has never been our home," Helena said gently. "It has only been the place where we survived. There is a difference." Cody spoke up from where he stood by the door, keeping watch. "I have a ranch about 30 miles north of here, closer to the territorial border. It is not much, but it is far enough from the Brennan's reach that you would be safe while this gets sorted out. You would both be welcome there." Helena studied him, this stranger who had appeared like something out of a dime novel to save her from a rope and a shallow grave. "Why are you doing this? Really?" He was quiet for a moment, and when he answered, there was something raw in his voice. 3 years ago, my sister was attacked by a man in Texas. She fought back, just like you did, but there was no one to speak up for her, no one to tell the truth of what happened. They hanged her for defending herself." He met Helena's eyes, and she saw the old grief there, still sharp despite the passage of time. "I could not save her, but I can help you, and I will, for as long as you need it." The words settled over the small room like a prayer, and Helena felt tears prick her eyes. She reached out and touched Cody's arm, a brief connection that carried more weight than words. "Thank you." They left that night, slipping out of Georgetown under cover of darkness. Cody had 2 horses and a pack mule, and he rode alongside the sisters with the easy competence of someone who had spent most of his life in the saddle. The mountain air was cold and thin, and Helena wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders as they climbed the narrow trail north. Rose dozed against Helena's back as they rode, exhausted by fear and the late hour. Helena stayed awake, hyper-aware of Cody's presence beside her, the solid reassurance of him. They did not speak much during that long night ride, but the silence was comfortable rather than awkward, the quiet of 2 people who understood that sometimes presence mattered more than words. Dawn was breaking over the mountains when they finally reached Cody's ranch, and Helena felt something in her chest loosen at the sight of it. It was modest, as he had said, a sturdy log cabin with a barn and corral, a creek running through the property that caught the early light and turned it to silver. There were cattle grazing in the meadow beyond, and chickens scratching in the yard. It looked like peace felt, like safety made solid. Cody helped them down from the horses and showed them inside. The cabin was neat and well maintained, with a fireplace already laid and waiting to be lit. There were 2 rooms, one larger main room with a kitchen area and a smaller bedroom to the side. "You and your sister take the bedroom," Cody said, already moving to start a fire. "I will bed down out here." "We cannot take your room," Helena protested, but Cody waved her off. "You can and you will. I have spent more nights under the stars than under a roof. This is no hardship, I promise you." Helena wanted to argue further, but exhaustion was crashing over her in waves now that they had stopped moving. She guided Rose to the bedroom, and they collapsed onto the bed together, still fully clothed. Rose was asleep within seconds, but Helena lay awake a while longer, listening to the sounds of Cody moving around the cabin, the crackle of the fire, the quiet domesticity of it all. She must have fallen asleep eventually, because when she woke, sunlight was streaming through the window, and the smell of coffee and frying bacon filled the air. Rose was still asleep beside her, and Helena slipped out of bed carefully, not wanting to wake her. Cody was at the stove, tending a pan of eggs with the same focused attention he seemed to bring to everything. He looked up when Helena emerged and gave her a small smile that transformed his serious face into something almost boyish. "Good morning. I figured you would be hungry." "Starving," Helena admitted. She moved to help him, and together they set the table for breakfast. It felt strange and wonderful to work alongside someone like this, to fall into an easy rhythm of cooperation. She had forgotten what it was like to have help, to not carry every burden alone. When Rose woke and joined them, they ate together at the small table, and Helena watched her sister slowly relax in the warmth and safety of Cody's home. They talked about small things, inconsequential things, carefully avoiding the subject of Georgetown and the Brennans and what would happen next. After breakfast, Cody excused himself to tend to the cattle, and Helena set about cleaning up while Rose explored the cabin with the cautious excitement of a cat in a new place. When everything was tidy, Helena went outside to find Cody. He was in the corral, working with a young horse, his movements patient and deliberate. Helena leaned against the fence and watched, fascinated by the way he seemed to communicate with the animal through touch and tone rather than force. "You are good with horses," she observed when he paused to let the horse rest. "Horses are honest," Cody replied. "They do not lie about what they want or what they fear. I appreciate that." Helena understood what he meant. After years of navigating the unspoken rules and hypocrisies of town life, there was something refreshing about straightforward honesty. "What happens now?" she asked. "With Georgetown, with the Brennans." Cody came to the fence and stood beside her, both of them looking out over the ranch. "I sent word to the territorial marshal this morning," explained the situation. "He is a fair man, and he does not have much love for folks who abuse their power. He will investigate, take statements. With my testimony and the physical evidence of your torn dress and the defensive nature of Brennan's wound, you should be cleared of any wrongdoing. And if I am not?" Helena heard the fear in her own voice, the terrible possibility that had been haunting her since the moment the cell door slammed shut. Cody turned to face her fully, and there was steel in his expression. "Then we will deal with that when it comes. But I will not let you hang for protecting yourself, Helena. I give you my word on that." The use of her first name sent a little thrill through her, intimate and unexpected. She realized how close they were standing, close enough that she could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes, the faint scar on his jaw that she had not noticed before. "You barely know me," she whispered. "Why are you willing to risk so much? Maybe I want to know you better." His voice was low, honest. "Maybe I saw something in you when you walked out of that jail, something brave and fierce that made me think I would be a fool not to try." Helena's breath caught. She had not let herself think about things like attraction or romance, not when survival took up so much energy. But standing here in the mountain sunshine with this good, serious man who had appeared like an answer to a prayer she had not known how to pray, she felt possibility unfold in her chest like wings. Before she could respond, the sound of hoofbeats made them both turn. 3 riders were approaching up the trail, and Helena's heart sank when she recognized the lead rider's expensive saddle and fine horse. Marcus Brennan had found them. Cody stepped in front of Helena automatically, his hand dropping to his gun. "Stay behind me." The riders pulled up in front of the cabin, and Helena saw that Marcus had brought 2 of his father's ranch hands with him, both of them armed and looking mean. Marcus's arm was bandaged where she had cut him, and his face was twisted with rage. "There she is," Marcus snarled. "The little wildcat who tried to kill me." "You mean the woman who defended herself when you assaulted her," Cody corrected calmly. "And you are trespassing on my property. I suggest you leave before this becomes a legal matter." Marcus laughed, an ugly sound. "Legal matter? Boy, I am the law in these parts. My father owns the sheriff, the judge, and half the businesses in Georgetown. You think one nobody cowboy is going to stand between me and justice? Justice?" Helena found her voice, stepping out from behind Cody despite his warning look. "You want to talk about justice, Marcus? You tried to force yourself on me. You grabbed me, you hurt me, and when I defended myself, you lied about what happened. That is not justice." "You are lucky I am only looking to see you hanged," Marcus shot back. If I wanted revenge for what you did, I would take it right now. Then take it. Cody's voice was ice cold. You have got 3 men, all armed. I am one. Should be easy, right? The challenge hung in the air, and Helena saw Marcus's men exchange uncertain glances. Up close, there was something about Cody that suggested he was more dangerous than he looked, some quality of readiness that made smart men think twice. Marcus seemed to sense it too because his bluster faltered slightly. This is not over. My father will have the territorial marshal in his pocket within the week. That girl will hang, and you will be charged with harboring a fugitive. Your father does not have as much reach as you think, Cody replied, and the marshal is already investigating this case. When he hears the truth, the only person facing charges will be you. We will see about that. Marcus wheeled his horse around with unnecessary force, making the animal dance nervously. Come on, boys. Let the lovebirds enjoy their last days of freedom. They rode off in a cloud of dust, and Helena released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Her hands were shaking, and she pressed them together to still them. Cody turned to her, his expression concerned. Are you all right? I am terrified, she admitted, but I am also furious. How dare he come here and threaten us like that? How dare he act like he is the victim in this? Men like Marcus Brennan have never been told no, Cody said. They think the world exists to give them what they want, and when someone pushes back, they cannot comprehend it. He reached out and took one of her shaking hands in his grip warm and steady. But you are not alone in this, Helena. Whatever comes, we face it together. The simple promise steadied her, and she squeezed his hand in return. Together, she repeated, and the word felt like a vow. The days that followed fell into an unexpected rhythm. Helena and Rose helped around the ranch, and Cody taught them both how to ride properly, how to mend fences, how to read the weather in the mountain sky. Helena found herself laughing more than she had in years, found joy in simple things like gathering eggs and baking bread in Cody's well-worn oven. And through it all, she became increasingly aware of Cody himself, the way he moved, the sound of his voice, the rare smiles that lit up his serious face. She caught him watching her sometimes with an expression that made her pulse race, and she wondered if he could see the way her own feelings were shifting, deepening, becoming something that had nothing to do with gratitude and everything to do with the man he was. Rose noticed, of course. Sisters always did. One evening while they were washing dishes, she leaned close and whispered, "You like him." Helena tried to deflect. "He has been very kind to us." "That is not what I mean, and you know it." Rose grinned, looking more like the carefree girl she should have been allowed to be. "You look at him the way Mama used to look at Papa, like he is the answer to everything." Helena felt her cheeks warm. "Is it that obvious, only to someone who knows you?" Rose bumped her shoulder affectionately. "I think it is wonderful, Helena. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to be loved." The words lodged in Helena's heart, tender and painful at once. She did not know if she believed she deserved those things, but she was starting to want them with a fierceness that surprised her. That night, after Rose had gone to bed, Helena found Cody sitting on the porch, looking out at the stars. She joined him, and they sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds of the ranch. "Tell me about your sister," Helena said softly. "If you want to, I mean." "You do not have to." Cody was quiet for so long that Helena thought he might not answer. Then he began to speak, his voice low and measured. "Her name was Catherine. She was 2 years younger than me, and she was the kindest person I ever knew, always taking in strays, both animal and human. Always believing the best of people even when they did not deserve it." He paused, and Helena waited, sensing there was more. "The man who attacked her was the foreman of the ranch where we worked. She rejected his advances, and he did not take it well. One night he cornered her in the barn. She fought back with a pitchfork, wounded him badly. He claimed she attacked him out of nowhere, and because he was well liked and she was just a girl, they believed him. Cody's voice roughened. I tried to tell them the truth, but I was just her brother, just another cowboy with no standing. They hanged her 3 days after the trial. I had to watch. Helena reached out and took his hand, threading her fingers through his. I am so sorry. After that, I could not stay in Texas. Could not stay anywhere I might see that foreman's face or hear people talk about how justice had been served. I drifted for a while, took work where I could find it, saved every penny until I could buy this place. I thought maybe if I built something good, something solid, it would make the anger hurt less. Did it? Helena asked. Not really, Cody admitted. But then you walked out of that jail and I saw Catherine in you. That same courage, that same refusal to be broken by people who thought they had the right to hurt you. And I knew I could not walk away, could not let you face what she faced alone. Helena's throat was tight with unshed tears. She turned to face him fully, still holding his hand. Cody, I am not your sister. You do not owe me her justice. I know that. His storm-gray eyes found hers in the starlight. This stopped being about Catherine the moment I got to know you, Helena. This is about you now, about the way you take care of your sister even when you are barely able to take care of yourself. About the way you make bad coffee but excellent biscuits. About the way you laugh when the chickens steal the scraps before the pigs can get them. About the way you make me feel like I am home for the first time since I lost my family. Helena's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might break free of her chest. Cody, she whispered, and his name was a plea and a question and an answer all at once. He reached up and cupped her face with his free hand, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone with infinite gentleness. I am falling in love with you, Helena Lancaster. I know it is fast. I know the timing is terrible, but it is the truth, and I am tired of living in a world where the truth gets people killed. So there it is. I love you. Helena kissed him before he could say anything else, pressing her lips to his with all the pent-up emotion of the past weeks. He made a surprised sound and then kissed her back, his arms coming around her to pull her close. It was not a gentle kiss, not tentative or questioning. It was fierce and desperate and full of all the things they had not said yet, all the fear and hope and desire that had been building between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Helena rested her forehead against his. I love you too, she said. I think I have loved you since you walked into that jailhouse and refused to let them make me a victim. You gave me back my own strength, Cody. You made me believe I deserved to fight for myself. They sat wrapped in each other's arms until the stars wheeled overhead, and the night grew cold enough to drive them inside. Even then, they were reluctant to part, stealing kisses in the doorway like youngsters until they were both grinning like fools. Over the next few days, their relationship shifted into something both more solid and more intense. They were careful to be appropriate in front of Rose, but when they were alone, they talked for hours, learning each other's histories and hopes and fears. Cody told her about growing up on a cattle drive, about the first horse he ever broke, about his dreams of building this ranch into something that could support a family. Helena told him about her parents, about the fear of losing Rose the way they had lost everything else, about the small secret dreams she had harbored of a different kind of life. The territorial marshal arrived on a bright afternoon 2 weeks after they had fled Georgetown. His name was Samuel Porter, and he was a weathered man in his 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner. He interviewed Helena first, then Cody, then reviewed the evidence and the testimonies from Georgetown. Miss Lancaster, he said when he had finished. "Based on everything I have seen and heard, I am ruling this a clear case of self-defense. The charges against you are dismissed. Furthermore, I will be having a very serious conversation with Marcus Brennan about filing false charges and with Sheriff Watkins about proper investigative procedure." The relief that washed over Helena was so intense she felt dizzy. Cody steadied her with a hand on her elbow, and she leaned into his strength gratefully. Marshal Porter was not finished. "However, I will be honest with you. The Brennan family has a lot of influence in Georgetown. While you are legally cleared, I cannot guarantee your safety if you return to that town. They are vindictive people." "We have no intention of returning," Cody said firmly. "Helena and her sister are staying here with me." The marshal raised an eyebrow, clearly reading between the lines. "I see. Well then, I wish you all the best. You have my contact information if there are any further problems." After the marshal left, Helena turned to Cody with wide eyes. "You told him we were staying, but you never asked me." Cody had the grace to look sheepish. "I suppose I should have phrased that differently. Helena, would you and Rose consider making this ranch your home, permanently? Are you asking what I think you are asking?" Helena's heart was racing again, hope and joy and a little bit of fear all tangled together. "I am asking if you will marry me," Cody said. "I know it is fast. I know we are still getting to know each other, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you, Helena. I want to build a life with you here on this ranch. I want to give Rose a safe home to grow up in. I want to wake up next to you every morning and go to sleep beside you every night. I want everything if you will have me." Helena laughed, a sound of pure joy that rang out across the ranch. "Yes," she said. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Cody swept her up in his arms and spun her around, both of them laughing like children. When he set her down, he kissed her thoroughly, and Helena felt the last of her fear and uncertainty melt away. This was right. This was real. This was home. They were married a month later in a small ceremony in a town 20 miles north of the ranch, far from the Brennans' reach. Rose stood as Helena's witness, glowing with happiness for her sister. The local minister performed the ceremony in a tiny church with wildflowers on the altar and sunshine streaming through the windows. When Cody slipped the simple gold band onto Helena's finger, she felt like she was stepping into a new life, one where she was not just surviving but truly living. They exchanged vows that they had written themselves, promises to stand together, to defend each other, to build something good in this hard mountain country. The kiss that sealed their marriage was sweet and full of promise, and when they walked out of that church as husband and wife, Helena felt like she was floating. The first year of their marriage was not easy. Ranching was hard work, and there were times when the money was tight and the weather was brutal and Helena wondered if they had made a terrible mistake. But through it all, Cody was beside her, steady and strong and unfailingly kind. They learned each other's rhythms, how to fight fair and make up thoroughly, how to divide the work and share the victories. Rose blossomed under their care, growing into a confident young woman with dreams of opening her own dress shop someday. Helena watched her sister laugh freely and flirt harmlessly with the ranch hands Cody hired on for the busy seasons, and she felt a deep satisfaction that Rose was getting the chance to simply be young. The second year brought prosperity. The cattle herd grew, and Cody's reputation as an honest rancher spread. They hired more help and bought more land. Helena started a vegetable garden that became the envy of their neighbors, and she learned to make cheese and cure meat and all the skills that made a ranch self-sufficient. And then, on a cold November morning, Helena woke with a certainty that made her heart race with joy. She waited until she was sure, until the doctor from the nearby town confirmed it, before she told Cody. She chose a quiet evening, just the two of them sitting by the fire after Rose had gone to bed. Helena took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "We are going to have a baby." The expression on Cody's face was something Helena would treasure for the rest of her life. Wonder and joy and a little bit of fear, all mixed together. "A baby," he repeated, his voice awed. "We are going to be parents." "You are going to be a wonderful father," Helena said, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. Their son was born the following summer, a healthy boy with his father's gray eyes and his mother's determination. They named him Samuel, after the marshal who had given them a chance at this life. Cody cried when he held his son for the first time, and Helena fell in love with him all over again, watching this strong, serious man turn to absolute mush over their baby. Rose doted on her nephew, and the ranch rang with the sounds of a growing family. 2 years later, a daughter joined them, a tiny girl they named Catherine for the sister Cody had lost. And 2 years after that, another son, this one named after Helena's father. The children grew up healthy and loved, running wild through the meadows and learning to ride almost before they could walk. Cody taught them to be honest and brave, to defend the weak and stand up for what was right. Helena taught them to be kind, to work hard, to find joy in simple things. The years rolled by, marked by the changing seasons and the rhythms of ranch life. They had hard times, of course. There were droughts and harsh winters, illnesses and injuries, and all the ordinary heartbreaks of life. But through it all, Helena and Cody stood together, just as they had promised. Rose eventually opened her dress shop in a booming town to the west, married a kind schoolteacher, and had children of her own. She visited the ranch often, and Helena loved watching their children play together, loved knowing that the family they had built was strong and growing. On their 20th anniversary, Cody took Helena up into the mountains above the ranch, to a spot where you could see for miles in every direction. They sat together in the wildflower meadow, holding hands and watching their children play below. "You ever regret it?" Cody asked. "Giving up Georgetown, the life you had planned?" Helena looked at him, at this man who had defended her when no one else would, who had loved her through fear and uncertainty, and built a life with her that was richer than anything she could have imagined. Georgetown was never a life. It was just existence. This, what we have here, this is living. Cody smiled and pulled her close. "You did right all those years ago defending yourself, and I will spend the rest of my life defending you, defending this family we built. That is my promise, Helena, always." "Always," she echoed, and kissed him as the mountain wind blew around them and their children's laughter rose up from the valley below. They had built something good in this hard country, something that would outlast them both. A legacy of courage and love, and the simple truth that sometimes the best thing you can do is stand up for yourself and let someone who loves you stand beside you. The sun was setting over the Rocky Mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple, and Helena Jensen held her husband's hand and felt completely, perfectly happy. This was home. This was family. This was the life she had fought for, the life Cody had helped her claim. And it was more than enough. It was everything. Years continued to pass in that good way that marks a life well lived, where the days blur together in contentment, but the important moments stand out in crystal clarity. Helena and Cody watched their children grow into fine adults, watched Samuel take over more of the ranch operations with his father's patient wisdom, watched Catherine become a teacher who fought for her students the way her parents had taught her to fight for what was right, watched their youngest run off to become a doctor in Denver. Rose's dress shop became famous throughout the territory, and she and Helena would spend long afternoons together when visits allowed. sewing and talking and laughing about how far they had come from those scared girls in Georgetown. The town itself had faded in importance as silver prices dropped, and the Brennan family's influence had waned with their fortune. Marcus Brennan himself had died in a saloon fight years ago, his end as ugly and meaningless as the man himself had been. Helena never wasted time thinking about him or what might have been. She had learned that the best revenge was living well, and she and Cody had certainly done that. On quiet evenings, when the ranch work was done, and the children were settled with families of their own, Helena and Cody would sit on their porch just as they had that first night she told him she loved him. They would hold hands and watch the stars come out over the mountains, and sometimes they would talk, and sometimes they would simply be together in comfortable silence. "I was thinking today," Cody said one such evening, his hair now shot through with silver, "about the day I saw you being dragged into that jail. I almost did not go in. Almost convinced myself it was not my business." "What made you change your mind?" Helena asked. She had never known this part of the story. "Your eyes," Cody said simply. "Even terrified, even certain you were going to die, you were not giving up. You were still fighting. And I thought, there is a woman who deserves someone to fight for her, so I did." Helena squeezed his hand, feeling the familiar calluses, the strength that had never faltered in all their years together. "You gave me my life back, Cody. Everything good that came after, it all started with you walking into that jailhouse and telling the truth." "We gave each other our lives back," Cody corrected gently. "You reminded me that standing up for what is right matters, that Catherine's death did not have to be meaningless if I could prevent it from happening to someone else. You gave me purpose again, Helena. You gave me love again. You gave me a family and a reason to believe the world could be good." They sat wrapped in each other's arms as the night deepened around them, two people who had found each other in the worst of circumstances and built something beautiful despite it all. Their grandchildren came often to the ranch, and Helena loved filling the house with noise and laughter, loved teaching them to bake bread and gather eggs just as she had taught their parents. Cody taught them to ride and rope and read the weather, passing on the skills that had sustained their family through good times and bad. Samuel and his wife eventually took over the full operation of the ranch, but Helena and Cody stayed on in a smaller cabin they built near the creek, content to watch the next generation carry on what they had started. On their 40th anniversary, surrounded by children and grandchildren and even a few great-grandchildren, Helena looked around the ranch they had built together and felt a profound sense of completion. This was what she had been defending that day in Georgetown, though she had not known it then. Not just her body or her life, but her right to a future, to love, to family, to joy. Cody caught her eye across the crowd of celebrating relatives and raised his glass to her, and she raised hers back. No words were needed. They had spent 4 decades learning each other's silences, and this one was full of love and satisfaction, and the knowledge that they had done well by each other, and by the family they had created. That night, after everyone had gone home or to bed, they walked down to the creek in the moonlight, moving slower than they once had but still steady, still together. Helena leaned against Cody's shoulder and listened to the water running over the stones, the same sound she had heard that first morning when they arrived at this place that had become home. "No regrets?" Cody asked, as he had asked her so many times over the years. "Not a single one," Helena replied, as she always did. "You defended me when I needed it most, Cody Jensen, and I have loved you every day since." "You did right," Cody said, echoing the words he had spoken in that Georgetown jail so many years ago. "And I will keep defending you until my last breath." "I know," Helena said. She turned to kiss him, and it was sweet and familiar and still contained a spark of the passion that had burned between them since the beginning. "I have always known." They stood together by the creek until the moon rose high overhead. Two people who had started their story with violence and fear and transformed it through sheer determination and love into something lasting and good. The ranch they had built would go on without them someday, but the legacy they left, the lesson that you could stand up for yourself and find someone to stand beside you, that would echo through their family for generations to come. And really, Helena thought as Cody took her hand to walk back to their cabin, that was all anyone could hope for in this life. To love and be loved, to fight the good fights, to build something that mattered, and to know at the end of your days that you had lived with courage and integrity and joy. The Colorado mountains stood eternal around them, and somewhere in the valley below, the cattle were settling for the night, and the ranch was quiet and peaceful under the stars. Helena Lancaster Jensen had defended herself once and found not just freedom but a whole life. A love story written across 40 years of mountain sunrises and cold winter nights and everything in between. It was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything she had fought for, and everything she had never dared to dream was possible. And as she fell asleep that night in her husband's arms, safe and loved and home, Helena smiled and thought that sometimes the best stories start with the hardest moments, and the strongest love grows from the ground of shared courage. The Wild West had been unforgiving and often cruel, but it had also given her Cody, and that single gift outweighed all the hardships. They had built their happily ever after not in spite of how they met, but because of it. Two people who understood what it meant to fight for what mattered and to stand together no matter what storms came. And they lived the rest of their days in that good mountain valley, surrounded by family and love, two souls who had found each other in the darkness and walked together into the light. It was a love story for the ages, written in dust and starlight, and the unbreakable bond between two people who had chosen each other when choice mattered most. The end came peacefully for both of them. Years later, within months of each other, as is sometimes the way with couples who have truly become one. Their children buried them side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, and the whole territory came to pay their respects to the man who had always stood for justice, and the woman who had never stopped fighting for what was right. The ranch thrived for generations after, and Helena and Cody's story became part of family legend, told to children and grandchildren as an example of courage and love, and the importance of standing up for yourself while letting others stand beside you. They had lived full, rich lives, and their legacy was not just the land they had built on but the love they had shared and the family they had raised. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the mountain wind blows just right, you can almost hear their laughter echoing across the valley, the sound of two people who found each other in the hardest of times and loved each other through all the years that followed. It was a love story worthy of the Wild West, and it ended exactly as it should have, with two people who had defended each other and themselves until the very end, together always, happy and complete and home.